Imagine serving your dog breakfast, right? But before they can even take a single bite, you actually have to slide this protective tubular fabric sleeve over their head and ears.
Right, just to ensure they don't accidentally eat their own hair.
Exactly. Or picture an ancient empire literally breeding a dog to run a fever. Like a high body temperature so it could be used as a living, breathing hot water bottle for human ailments.
It's wild to think about because when you look at the dog sleeping at your feet, you expect this comforting, familiar baseline.
Yeah. Four legs, a tail, a bark.
Right, we project this sort of universal standard onto them, a generic domestic companion. But if you actually dig into the evolutionary history of specific breeds, that familiar baseline completely shatters.
It really does.
You aren't just looking at a pet anymore.
Yeah.
You're looking at an incredibly specialized piece of biological technology.
Yeah.
I mean, engineered by centuries of human necessity, environmental pressure, and frankly, sheer survival instinct.
Which is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the Steep Dive, where we have a massive stack of sources to go through. We're pulling from heavily detailed coat care manuals, historical breed profiles from the AKC, and some really fascinating genetic studies.
All to decode the extreme and honestly sometimes genuinely bizarre adaptations of the world's most unusual dogs.
Right. Our mission here is to figure out the how and the why behind these almost alien traits.
It's a journey that really reveals dogs as living time capsules. Their bodies actually document the exact historical needs of the humans who bred them.
Okay, so let's unpack this by looking at what happens when a dog's outward appearance is a complete deliberate lie.
Oh, I love this part.
Right. We're talking about biological camouflage that hides something ferocious. Look at the Bedlington Terrier. Visually, this animal is a dead ringer for a delicate, shaggy little lamb.
Oh, absolutely.
It has this pear-shaped head, a crisp white curly coat, a distinctively arched back. I mean, it looks like it belongs on a velvet pillow in a palace somewhere.
But in reality, the Bedlington was bred in the 1800s in the grueling, coal-dusted environment of English mining towns, specifically the mining shire of Bedlington.
Wow.
Yeah, so these were dogs doing dirty, deadly work in the pitch black.
Wait, okay, if you need a tough, gritty hunting dog for a coal mine, why breed one that looks like a newborn sheep? I mean, it feels like the ultimate undercover agent of the dog world.
Well, that lamb-like fluff is actually highly functional armor.
Really?
Yeah. The Bedlington was engineered to be a ferocious badger and otter hunter. And when a badger fights, it fights with razor-sharp claws and a crushing jaw.
Right, they're vicious.
Extremely. So the Bedlington's thick, curly coat acts like padded chainmail. When a badger snaps at the dog, it often just gets a mouthful of dense hair instead of, vital flesh.
Oh, wow. So it allows the terrier to strike back without getting seriously hurt.
Exactly.
And that arched back isn't just for show either, is it?
No, not at all. It's a huge clue to their genetic engine. They actually have speed hunting ancestry in their bloodline, most likely from the whippet. So that flexible, arched spine gives them a lithe, springy step. In the tight confines of a mine or a riverbank, they can coil and launch themselves with explosive speed to pursue quick, lethal prey.
That makes so much sense. And there's a specific dog in the historical profiles that completely blew my mind.
Oh, Ainsley's Piper.
Yes, the very first dog to officially carry the title of Bedlington Terrier was whelped or born in 1825. His name was Ainsley's Piper. And this dog, he started hunting badgers at 8 months old.
8 months.
Yeah. And his tenacity was so hardwired into his brain that he continued to bring down wild, aggressive otters in his old age when he was completely blind and completely toothless.
See, that perfectly illustrates the deception of the breed. You see a lamb, but you're actually dealing with the heart and grit of an apex predator.
Definitely. But evolution has more than one way to design a disguise. If the Bedlington is a lamb, the Commodore is, well, a giant moving mop.
A very accurate description.
It's a Hungarian flock guardian covered from nose to tail in these thick, heavy, rope-like cords.
And those cords are an absolute masterclass in form-meeting function. They form naturally as the dog's coarse guard hairs trap the softer undercoat.
Right.
He creates these dense felt ropes about the diameter of a quarter right at the skin. And it takes a full 2 years for this matted armor to fully mature.
The physical toll of just carrying that coat sounds terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if you weigh a dry Commodore's coat, you're looking at about 10 pounds of hair.
Which is heavy enough on its own.
Right. But if that dog jumps into a lake or gets caught in a storm, The coat absorbs water like a sponge and swells to a massive 25 pounds of dead weight.
It's incredible.
The grooming guides we looked at explicitly state it can take days to dry after a bath. You literally have to set these dogs up in front of high-speed industrial fans or place them on raised, ventilated grates just to prevent mildew from growing in their fur.
Yeah, the maintenance is intense.
So why would humans deliberately engineer a dog to carry 25 pounds of wet mop?
Well, because that mop saves their life. You have to remember the Commodore is an autonomous guardian. They lived outside, alone with the flock for months at a time.
Okay.
From a distance, to a wolf or a bear, the Commodore's silhouette and texture perfectly mimic a large sheep.
More biological camouflage.
Exactly, it's visual camouflage. The predator thinks it's stalking an easy meal, but as soon as the wolf strikes, it hits a literal suit of Kevlar.
A wolf's bite force is incredible, though. Does a dreadlock really stop that?
Absolutely. The cords are so densely packed and matted that canine teeth cannot easily penetrate through the layers to reach the Commodore's skin.
That is insane.
The wolf just gets a useless mouthful of felted rope. And that gives the Commodore the crucial seconds it needs to use its own massive size and strength to fight back and crush the predator.
It's literally a living tank hiding in a flock of sheep.
Precisely.
So we've seen the round cords of the Commodore, but nature actually came up with a completely different architectural approach to a heavy matted coat. If we travel from Hungary to the freezing Italian Alps, we run into the Bergamasco sheepdog.
The Bergamasco is a fascinating contrast because they don't have the round, rope-like cords of the Commodore. They produce what are called flat felts or flocks.
And the anatomy of this coat is wildly specific, right? It's not just one type of hair matting together. It's a structural weave of 3 distinct hair types.
What's fascinating here is how these 3 hairs operate like high-tech synthetic fibers. You have a dense, fine, oily undercoat that provides a waterproof base layer.
Okay.
Growing through that is a harsh goat hair, which literally has the strong, straight, tensile structure of a mountain goat's coat.
Wow, actual goat-like hair.
Yeah. And finally, you have a woolly top coat. So as the puppy matures, these 3 distinct textures naturally weave and lock together.
But this isn't a completely hands-off process. The human actually has to step in as a structural engineer.
Very much so.
The care guides emphasize that around 1 year of age, when that adult coat starts to weave together, the owner must manually tear and separate these clumps by hand.
Because without human intervention, the coat would fuse into one massive, solid mat.
Yeah.
And that would actually stretch and tear the dog's skin.
Ouch.
Yeah, so the owner acts as a sculptor, tearing the felts to set a specific width, usually about 2 to 3 fingers wide across the dog's body.
Interesting.
Because if the felts are allowed to grow too wide, they become too heavy and simply snap off under their own weight.
So if the Commodore is wearing heavy dreadlocks, the Bergamasco is basically wearing overlapping, hand-torn shingles of felt.
That's a great way to visualize it. And that shingle structure creates a perfect thermodynamic regulator.
How does that work?
Well, in the freezing alpine winters, the overlapping felts trap body heat. But in the sweltering summer, the flat shape of the flocks allows air to circulate down to the skin, keeping the dog cool.
The hygiene stats on the Bergamasco absolutely floored me. Because of the natural oils in that undercoat and the way the flat felts naturally repel dirt and debris, the manuals recommend bathing them only 1 to 3 times an entire year.
Which sounds crazy for a dog with that much hair.
Totally crazy. And we haven't even mentioned the biological visors.
Ah, the eyelashes. Yes. The Bergamasco grows extremely long, thick eyelashes that actually push the heavy, matted facial hair up and away from their corneas.
That's so smart.
It creates a natural awning over their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
This shields their vision from the harsh glare of the alpine sun and prevents snow blindness. It is a fully self-contained, weatherproof survival suit.
Unbelievable engineering. So we've explored dogs that evolved extreme, heavy, complex hair to survive. Now let's look at evolution's exact opposite solution for extreme survival.
Ditching the coat entirely.
Exactly, ditching the coat entirely. We're looking at the Xoloitzcuintli.
Also known as the Mexican hairless dog. This breed fundamentally rewrites the timeline of domestic dogs, tracing its heritage back over 3,000 years to Mesoamerican civilizations like the Aztecs and the Mayans.
They were named after Gulsalal, the Aztec god of lightning and death. The mythology surrounding them is intense, too. They were believed to be literal spirit guides responsible for safely escorting human souls through the treacherous landscape of the underworld.
But their defining physical trait, their complete lack of hair, is actually driven by a highly specific genetic mutation in the FOXI3 gene.
And this is where biology gets weird, because this gene doesn't just turn off hair growth, it fundamentally alters their dental anatomy.
Right. The FOXI3 gene is what geneticists call pleiotropic.
Pleiotropic.
Yes. That means it influences multiple seemingly unrelated traits because it affects the ectoderm.
Which is the outer layer, right.
Exactly, the outermost embryonic layer that eventually forms both skin structures and teeth. So because of this single gene mutation, hairless fellows are almost always missing their premolars and molars.
Hairless skin and missing teeth. It's just a package deal.
Right.
But nature doesn't like to put all its eggs in one basket, does it?
Never. A single litter of Zolos can produce both completely hairless puppies and fully coated puppies.
In the same litter.
In the same litter. The coated ones don't have the FOXI3 mutation, which means they have a normal coat of hair and a completely full set of teeth. It's an evolutionary backup plan to ensure the bloodline survives, even if the hairless trait suddenly becomes a disadvantage.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because the hairless solo has no fur to insulate its body, its internal furnace has to work overtime to compensate.
Right, they burn a lot of energy staying warm.
Yeah, their resting skin temperature naturally runs about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than a standard coated dog. And ancient civilizations recognized this.
We did.
They essentially used a genetic mutation as advanced medical technology. They treated these dogs like living, breathing hot water bottles, literally holding them against their bodies to soothe joint arthritis and respiratory issues like asthma.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes how we view the historical human-canine bond.
How so?
Well, these weren't just alarm systems or hunting tools. They were actual physical healers. The warmth radiating from a YOLO provided tangible circulatory relief to their owners in an era long before modern medicine.
That's incredible, but they almost didn't make it to the modern era. The historical records outline a systematic eradication.
It's a dark history.
Very. During the Spanish colonization of the Americas, the breed was targeted. They were viewed as symbols of indigenous pagan religion, and they were nearly driven to total extinction. They only survived by retreating into incredibly isolated, remote mountain villages for centuries.
And it wasn't until the 1950s that the breed was actually brought back from the brink. A major organized expedition ventured deep into the remote regions of Guerrero and Oaxaca to locate any surviving purebreds.
And this expedition wasn't led by a biologist, but by the famous Mexican artist Diego Rivera.
Exactly. They found the remaining dogs, brought them back, and carefully rebuilt the bloodline.
Which is just wild. An artist saving a 3,000-year-old genetic marvel. And today, they are having a massive resurgence, especially after being featured in the Disney movie Coco.
They definitely are.
But bringing an ancient, hairless dog into a modern home requires intense maintenance. You can't just let a Zolo play in the backyard at noon, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You have to apply pet-safe sunscreen to prevent severe UV burns. You have to rub them down with moisturizing lotions because they lack the hair oils that keep a normal dog's skin from cracking.
That's a lot of skincare.
It is. And in the winter, you have to artificially provide the insulation they genetically lack by putting them in sweaters and coats.
We have basically assumed the role of their missing biology.
That's exactly what we've done.
From spiritual guides navigating the underworld to wearing a fleece sweater in the snow. It's quite a wild trajectory.
It really is.
So we've seen the heavy, armored mountain guardians and the hairless healers. Now let's move to a completely different class of extreme engineering. Dogs built entirely for aerodynamics, explosive speed, and aristocratic aesthetics. The sighthounds.
Yes. This group pushes canine anatomy to the absolute limits of physical performance. Unlike a bloodhound that tracks a scent with its nose to the ground, sighthounds keep their heads up.
Right.
They hunt by detecting slight movements across vast open spaces like deserts or steppes and simply outrunning their prey.
Look at the borzoi, formerly known as the Russian wolfhound. Bred in the 17th century by Russian nobility to literally hunt wolves. They are built on an ancient greyhound template, but they are supersized.
Massive dogs.
Yeah, you have a dog that can weigh over 100 pounds, but it can gallop past you at 40 miles per hour. How does a 100-pound animal move that fast?
It's all in the internal geometry. To achieve 40 miles per hour, a borzoi utilizes what's called a double suspension gallop.
A double suspension gallop.
Right. When they run, there are two distinct moments in every single stride where all four of their paws are completely off the ground.
They're basically flying.
Literally flying. And to power that flight, their spine acts as a massive, flexible spring. Internally, they rely on a massively enlarged heart compared to a normal dog.
So a bigger engine.
Exactly. pumping blood into highly efficient, deep-set lungs to process the insane amount of oxygen needed for a sprint. Add to that a skull shape that gives them up to a 270-degree field of peripheral vision, and you have a biological missile locking onto a target.
But the physical maintenance of the sighthound family, I mean, it rivals human cosmetic routines.
Oh, easily.
Let's talk about the Afghan hound. Originating in the harsh, mountainous climates of Asia, they developed this incredibly long, flowing, silky coat to protect them from the cold at high altitudes. Today, the grooming protocols for an Afghan hound are staggering.
The breed care guides are incredibly rigid about lipid treatments. Owners don't just use standard dog shampoo. No, they use human-grade bath oils. And the specific oil depends entirely on the microscopic structure of a dog's hair shaft.
You're kissing?
Am serious. If the Afghan has a highly porous cottony coat that absorbs too much water, owners treat the hair with heavy humectants like alpha carry oil.
Okay.
But if the dog has a finer, silky coat, they use lighter lipid treatments like Neutrogena body oil to prevent the hair from becoming weighed down and greasy.
And the snoods? I brought this up at the very beginning of the deep dive, but we have to explain the snoods now.
Yes. So the ears of an Afghan hound are covered in long, luxurious hair called tassels.
Right.
When the dog leans down to eat its dinner, those tassels fall directly into the food bowl. If left unprotected, the dog will literally chew off its own ear hair along with its kibble.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so owners slide a tubular fabric, cover snood over the dog's head and neck. It pulls the ears back and safely secures the hair away from the mouth.
Wow.
On show days, they go a step further,
Where-
wrapping the ear hair in specialized bakery paper or plastic wraps to prevent breakage.
And they have a standard-approved haircut called Turkish pants, right?
Yes. The breed standard actually permits owners to trim the hair short along the saddle of the back, leaving the hair long on the legs, with specific short cuffs at the ankles to emphasize the dog's large, powerful feet. This aesthetic is officially referred to as Turkish pants.
So you've got this aerodynamic hunting machine that needs to wear a fabric tube to eat its breakfast, like it's protecting a fancy blowout at a salon.
Which really raises an important question about the modern reality of form versus function.
How so?
Well, think about the fragile-looking, hyper-aerodynamic build of the borzoi, or the Afghan hound, compared to the stationary armored bulk of the commodore we talked about.
Right.
These sighthounds are hyper-specialized athletes, but in the modern world, very few owners are using them to hunt wolves across the Russian steppes or chase leopards in the Asian mountains.
Obviously not.
Right. So today, to give those massive hearts and hyper-efficient lungs the exercise they're genetically programmed to need, owners participate in lure coursing.
Lure coursing.
Yeah, which essentially means letting the dog chase a white plastic bag attached to a motorized string across a field.
That's hilarious. But the Sighthound family is just packed with these extreme marvels. You've got the Irish Wolfhound, which holds the title as the tallest dog breed recognized by the AKC.
They are massive.
Yeah, they stand a full 3 feet tall at the shoulder and can weigh up to 180 pounds. They are literally the size of a small pony. Then you have the Pharaoh Hound, an ancient Egyptian hound brought to the island of Malta 2,500 years ago, which actually blushes.
That blushing is such a fascinating physiological quirk. Pharaoh hounds lack dark eumelanin pigment in their noses and ears.
Okay.
Their skin is incredibly pale and thin in those areas. So when the dog gets excited or happy, its heart rate spikes, flushing the capillaries with blood. Because there is no dark pigment to mask it, the rush of blood is visibly apparent, causing the dog's nose and ears to glow a deep, rosy red.
It literally wears its emotions right on its skin. And then there's the Basenji, the African barkless dog. They don't have a traditional bark. Instead, they produce this sound that's described as a yodel or a chortle.
Right, and the Basenji's vocal cords are perfectly normal, but the shape of their laryngeal ventricle, the space around the vocal cords, is shallower than in other breeds.
Ah, so it changes the acoustics.
Exactly. This anatomical difference restricts the volume and alters the vibration of the sound they produce. So instead of a sharp, loud bark, you get a complex, harmonic yodel. Furthermore, they exhibit almost feline behaviors, fastidiously grooming themselves like cats.
That's so unique.
These are incredibly ancient traits that have survived thousands of years of human partnership.
It completely reframes how you look at the animal sleeping on your couch, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, when you look at the sheer scale of canine engineering we've explored,
Hmm.
from the Bedlington Terrier hiding the grit of a badger hunter beneath the curls of a lamb, to the Commodore wearing 25 pounds of waterlogged, felted armor to survive wolf bites.
In the Bergamasco.
Yes, the mathematical perfection of the Bergamasco's three-hair alpine shingles, plus the 3,000-year-old medical utility of the hairless Azowetz-Quintley.
Not to mention the sighthounds.
Right, the anatomical extremes of the massive 40-mile-per-hour sighthounds who now require specific lipid oils and bakery paper just to maintain their historic beauty.
Dogs are, without a doubt, living historical artifacts. Their very DNA, their bone structure, the chemical composition of their hair, it has all been fundamentally sculpted by human necessity.
We needed them to adapt, and they did.
We needed fast hunters, heavy guards, and warm companions, and we molded canine biology to meet those demands perfectly. But that leaves us with a pretty provocative thought for you to mull over.
What's that?
Our needs are changing rapidly. As our modern lives become increasingly indoors, highly sanitized, heavily urbanized, and technology-driven, our environmental pressures are completely different than they were 1,000 years ago.
The hunting and guarding jobs are largely gone.
Precisely. So what will the dog breeds of the future look like? If form always follows function, how will canine DNA adapt to our modern, screen-lit, sedentary lifestyles? Will the dogs engineered for the year 3000 have physical adaptations that seem as bizarre and alien to future generations as a corded, mock-like Commodore seems to us today?
Wow. Will we breed them to process blue light, to thrive exclusively in high-rise apartments? It definitely makes you look at the dog sleeping at your feet a whole lot differently. They aren't just pets, they're the rough drafts of whatever we need them to be next.